It has been a year since we last met. Been over a year since I announced I was running for president. In fact, there are children who've been born and are now walking and talking since I announced that I was running for president. And in that time, I've spoken with union members and working Americans all across this country. Small towns and big cities, in living rooms and VFW halls, in coffee shops, at plants and farms and factories. But whether it's CWA members I've met in Iowa and Pennsylvania, or members of other unions, or those who don't belong to any union at all, there's one thing I've found in common. They all want to know that they're being given a fair shot in life, that wages they're making will be enough to raise a family, that they'll be able to afford health care if they or their loved ones get sick, that they'll be able to send their kids to college even if they're not rich, and that they'll be able to retire with dignity and respect and security after a lifetime of hard work. They're common hopes and modest dreams. But for a long time, they've been out of the reach of too many families here in America. I know something about this. As Larry mentioned, the reason I turned down a job on Wall Street and went to work as a community organizer in Chicago more than 2 decades ago was to help neighborhoods that had been devastated by the closing of steel plants all across the south side of Chicago. And I worked with churches and with unions to organize job training for those who'd been put out of a job, and to try to bring economic development to communities that had fallen on hard times. And it taught me the most valuable lesson in my life, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they're given a chance, and that change doesn't happen from the top down. Change happens from the bottom up, because we mobilize the American people to bring about change. It taught me that we can do anything when we are united and not divided. And so when I started out this campaign, I was making a bet on you, the American people, because I was absolutely convinced that the American people are decent and generous. They are willing to work hard and sacrifice for future generations. And if we could just get everybody together, united, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, young, old, there would be nothing that we could not accomplish, no problem we could not solve, and no destiny we could not fulfill. So when I talk to struggling workers on the campaign trail, or when I hear about how we're facing the highest levels of unemployment in years, it reminds me of why I entered into public life. It reminds me why I'm a Democrat. Because if the Democratic Party means anything, then it means that it values labor. If the Democratic Party stands for anything, it has to stand up for you. And if the Democratic Party has a vision for our future, it has to be a future where every single American is able to access the American dream. That's what CWA's agenda is about. That's what the Obama campaign's agenda is about. And that's why I want to work with you to realize that dream for every single American. But we know over the last 7.5 years, we've had a whole different philosophy in the White House. We've had an administration that doesn't see it that way. We've had the most anti-labor administration in our memory. They don't believe in unions. They don't believe in organizing. They packed the Labor Relations Board with their corporate buddies. They basically believe in a you're on your own philosophy. They call it the ownership society. That means you're on your own. If you're a worker that's been laid off of the job, tough luck, you're on your own. If you're a single mom trying to find health care for your kids, tough luck, you're on your own. If you're a child in inner city or rural America that doesn't have access to a decent education, tough luck, you're on your own. That's been the reigning philosophy over the last 70 years, but we are here to make a change. We've got news for the White House. We've got news for America. It's not the Department of Management, it's the Department of Labor. And we are here to take it back so that working people have a decent shot at life. That's why I'm running for President of the United States of America. Now, John McCain seems to think that the Bush years have been pretty good because he's offering more of the same. Like George Bush, Senator McCain is committed to more tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans who don't need them and weren't even asking for them. More trade agreements that fail to protect American workers. His response to the housing crisis is basically to sit on the sidelines and watch millions of people face foreclosure. And some of his top advisors were lobbyists for special interests when they started working for his campaign, so it's not hard to guess who they're going to be rooting for when they get into the White House. So while I know there's been some talk about whether or not the Democrats are going to be unified in November, let me be absolutely clear. You know, Senator Clinton and I have been in a fierce campaign, but we both understand we can't afford another 4 years of Bush policies, and that's what John McCain is offering, and that's why I know we'll come together this fall to take this country back. You can guarantee that. The truth is, though, the problems that we face go beyond just the Bush administration. For far too long, both Democrats and Republicans have allowed Wall Street to use lobbyists and campaign contributions to rig the system to get their way, no matter what it costs Americans. Think about it. The top mortgage lenders spent $185 million lobbying Congress, and we wonder why Washington was looking the other way when they were tricking families into buying homes they couldn't afford. Drug and insurance companies spent $1 billion over the last 10 years preventing health care reform from happening. When Bush put my cousin Dick Cheney in charge of energy policy, that was really embarrassing, by the way. When they put him in charge of energy policy, Cheney met with the environmental groups once, he met with the renewable energy groups once, he met with the oil and gas companies 40 times. So is it any wonder that ExxonMobil made $11 billion last quarter while you're paying close to $4 a gallon for a gallon of gas? It's not surprising. So what we need right now is a president who can work on behalf of ordinary Americans to take Washington back from special interests. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to bring about real change. Change that will make a lasting difference in the lives of ordinary Americans. And I believe that I can bring about that change. Because I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually worked to rein in the power of the lobbyists, passing historic ethics reform legislation in Illinois and in the United States Senate. I'm the only candidate remaining in this race who's not taken money from lobbyists and PACs. They haven't funded my campaign, they will not run my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people, of working people, of unions when I am President of the United States of America. Your voices will be heard. Your voices will be heard because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of playing defense. I want to play some offense. I'm ready to play offense for a living wage. I'm ready to play offense for a secure retirement. We're ready to play offense on universal health care. It's time we stood up to the drug companies, the insurance companies, the HMOs who've been blocking reform for too long and tell them enough is enough. I refuse to accept that the richest nation on earth leaves 47 million people without health insurance. If you're a union member and you've got health insurance, all you're bargaining about is health care, not even talking about wages anymore. We are going to change that. We're going to work with employers. We're going to work with employers who are doing the right thing and providing health insurance for their members to lower premiums by up to $2,500 per family per year. For people who don't have health care, we're going to set up a plan that's as good as the health care I have as a member of Congress, because you guys pay my salary. I shouldn't have better health care than you. And we're not going to wait 20 years from now to do it or 10 years from now to do it. I'm going to do it by the end of my first term as President of the United States of America. You can take that to the bank. We're ready to play some offense for America's workers. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, we'll acknowledge that we can't stop globalization completely. We can't stop it in its tracks. We want to open new markets to our goods so that we can strengthen our economy. But what I refuse to accept is that we have to sign trade deals like the South Korea agreement that are bad for American workers. What I refuse to accept is that we have to sign trade deals that put the interests of multinational corporations ahead of the interests of our workers. I refuse to accept that we have to sign trade deals that lack enforceable labor and environmental provisions. That's why I opposed NAFTA. That's why I opposed CAFTA. That's why I opposed permanent normalized trade relations with China without having some sort of assurances that American workers and American consumers were going to be looked after.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because I don't think that we should, because we need somebody in the White House who's thinking about you. Not just thinking about Wall Street, thinking about Main Street. Not just thinking about corporate profits, but thinking about you paying your bills at the end of the month. That's the kind of president you need. That's why I'm opposing the Colombian Free Trade Agreement, because when organized workers put their organized... When organizing workers put an organizer's life at risk, it makes a mockery of our labor protections. And I want to congratulate Larry for the leadership that he has shown in making sure that the entire world knows the violations of worker rights that are taking place in Colombia right now. That's something worthy of applause. But you know what? Here's the problem. If we want to stand up for workers' rights abroad, we've got to look out for workers' rights here in the United States of America. It's time we had a president who didn't choke on the word union.
Yes.
We need to strengthen our unions by letting them do what they do best, and that is organize our workers. If a majority of workers want a union, they should get a union, and that is why I intend to sign the Employee Free Choice Act when it lands on my desk. It's that simple. It's time to get that passed out of the Senate, time to get it to my desk at the White House, time to give workers a right to organize. When I'm president, you'll have a partner in the White House, not an adversary. We'll pass the Employer Free Choice Act, but I also want to pass what I'm calling the Patriot Employer Act that I've been working on since I got to the Senate, because under the Obama administration, we're not going to give tax breaks to companies that ship jobs overseas. We are going to give those tax breaks to companies that invest right here in the United States of America. We're going to make investments in green technology. You know, we can't keep on sending $1 billion to foreign nations because of our addiction to foreign oil. We should be making investments in U.S. companies to create solar panels and windmills and biodiesel and making buildings more energy efficient So that's why I've already said we're going to invest $150 billion over 10 years in green technology, jobs that cannot be exported, jobs that will put CWA members back to work. That is a promise that we are making not just to this generation of Americans, but to the next generation of Americans, because we've got to free ourselves from dependence on foreign oil. That's the only way we're going to bring gas prices down. That's why we've got to start working on it right away. I intend to give working families the support that they need. I'm the only candidate in this race who's called for a middle-class tax cut that will help 95% of working families. If you make $75,000 a year or less, we're going to give you an offset on your payroll tax. Save $1,000 per family. Senior citizens who make $50,000 a year or less shouldn't have to pay income tax on their Social Security. They already have a tough time making ends meet. You know, I believe in the free market. I believe in capitalism and entrepreneurship. When a CEO is making more in 10 minutes than ordinary workers making an entire year, and it's the CEO who gets a tax break and the worker gets nothing, and then when the company goes belly up because of bad management, the CEO walks away with millions of dollars in bonuses, and the worker has his pension dumped, something is wrong. We are going to change it. We are going to provide workers the protections they deserve. And make no mistake, when I'm in the White House, you'll have a president who knows that investing in your future means investing in America's future. I will set a goal of ensuring that every single American has affordable broadband access, no matter where you live, no matter how much money you have. That's how we'll help ensure that children who've been left behind despite the slogans will actually have the skills they need to compete in the global economy. And we're going to raise broadband speed. It is a scandal that we invented the internet, and now here we are ranking 16th, 20th, 25th. I don't know what it is this week. It's shameful. We're going to take on the special interests so that we can unleash the power of the wireless spectrum for our safety and our security and connectivity. Which reminds me, by the way, we should have somebody on the FCC who actually understands the importance of making investments and who actually listens once in a while to CWA, listens to the people who are making our networks work every single day. We've got to stop standing idly by while our nation's infrastructure crumbles and decays. In 2005, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave our infrastructure a D, citing problems with our airports, our dams, our schools, our highways, our waterways. 1 out of 3 urban bridges were classified as structurally deficient. We all saw the tragic results of that in Minnesota last year. So for our economy, our safety, and our workers, we have to rebuild America. And that's why I've proposed a national infrastructure reinvestment bank. We'll invest $60 billion over 10 years. The investments will generate nearly 2 million new jobs, many of them in the construction industry that's been hard hit because of the housing crisis. The repairs will be determined not by politics, but by what will maximize our safety and our homeland security, what's going to keep our environment clean and our economy strong. And for those of you who think that we can't afford it, let me just remind you, if we can spend $400 million a day in Iraq rebuilding Baghdad, if we can spend $10 billion a month rebuilding a foreign nation, we can spend $10 billion right here in the United States of America to put Americans back to work and to create long-term competitiveness for our economy. That's common sense. That's something we can do. So for those who believe that an investment in America's infrastructure is long overdue, to those who believe we should lead the world in broadband adoption rates, to those who understand that connecting America to the internet isn't a luxury but a necessity, to the flight attendants who've been hard hit by recent bankruptcy or merger or fearing a merger in the future, and who deserve a president who's fighting for their pay and benefits and ensuring that they're being treated fairly. To the CWA and to all of American workers, we say right here and right now, the 21st century will be your century. These are the battles we should be fighting. This is the future we should be building. It's going to be hard so long as we keep on spending all that money in Iraq on a war that should have never been authorized and should have never been waged. I opposed this war from the beginning. I've opposed it each year that it's been going on. And that's why I'm the one candidate who will offer a real choice in November, because I can stand up to John McCain with credibility and say no to a 100-year occupation of Iraq and say no to a George Bush third term. That's why I'm running for president, to offer a clear contrast to the American people. It's time to stop fighting in Iraq and start fighting for good jobs and universal health care. To start fighting for America's infrastructure, to start fighting for opportunity and prosperity here at home. So let me be clear. The American people have a choice in this election. We can keep playing the same old Washington game, shuffle around the players a little bit, but basically keep doing what we've been doing. Or we can choose a different future. Just imagine it. Imagine a president whose life story is like so many of your own, who knows what it's like to go to college on student loans, or to see a mother get sick and worry that maybe she can't pay the bills, who doesn't have a trust fund to start with, had to scratch and work and claw to build a better life for his or her family. Imagine a Washington where we have a system that works for Main Street and not just Wall Street, where you can trust that your voice will be heard on any major piece of labor legislation that is signed into law. Imagine a future where you're doing your part for America while America's doing its part for you, and together we're fulfilling the promise of the information age. Imagine an America where our politics is not based on fear, but is based on hope. It's not based on division, but is based on bringing people together, where we're no longer distracted, we're no longer taking cheap shots, but we're actually working together, coming together as Americans to build a better future for our children and our grandchildren. That's the vision that CWA has always fought for. That's the America that I believe that's within our grasp. That is what is possible if we take this opportunity right now. You know, there's a moment in the life of every generation where that spirit of unity and hopefulness has to come through if we're to make our mark on history. This is our moment. This is our time. And if you will march with me, if you will organize with me, if you will vote for me, then I promise you this: we will not just win the Democratic nomination, we will win the general election, and then you and I together, CWA and an Obama administration, we are going to change this country. We are going to change the world. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you. Thank you.